Hey everybody, Trevor here. Just going to show you a quick demo of how source connectors and datasets works, from my latest blog post talking about how you keep data in sync with a warehouse. So to start, let's take a look at some data that I've got here in my BigQuery console. I've got some page views. You can see there's some simple stuff in here. If I go to preview, you can see I've got event IDs, timestamps, user IDs, a few simple dimensions of data that we can play with. So switching over here to Trevorwithdata, let's go ahead over to our source connectors menu, and we're going to add a connector. When I add a connector, I'm going to pick the warehouse that I'm interested in, BigQuery in this case. I'm going to hit next. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a name, my BigQuery source. And I need to supply the project ID that I'm going to pull from. In my case, I've got one here. And I need to also supply the dataset ID that I want to use, which I'm going to grab from right here. You can see I've got this Trevorwithdata sync demo dataset. Once I've specified the dataset ID, all I need to do is upload my GCP service credentials, which I've got handy here. And so I'll just paste those in and hit next. What it's going to do is it's going to use those credentials to try and connect to BigQuery and make sure that it can talk to it and that it can set up everything that it needs. It's kind of doing some stuff with Airbyte under the hood to make sure that Airbyte can work properly. So we'll just give that a second. Cool, you can see it successfully found those two data sets that I want to pull over. So I'm going to go ahead and save my source. And now I've got my BigQuery source that I can start creating data sets from. So let's head over to the Datasets tab, and we're going to go ahead and create a data set. So I'm going to add a data set. I'm going to select the source that I just connected. Now it's going to go fetch those data sets that we just saw before. Cool, here's my data sets. Let's start with our event data page views. When I click next, it's going to ask me which fields do you want to pull over. I'm going to go ahead and grab them all. Now, for event data, I'm going to use Mirror. Mirror is great because it incrementally syncs all new data and any historical changes to the data, including deletes, which is perfect for my event data set. The row ID field that it needs so that it can kind of keep things in sync. I'm going to use my event ID here. My row version field, I've got a field called updated at. That way I know what the latest version of that row is. And then the delete indicator field, I've got is deleted. I need that to be there so that if we delete something in BigQuery, it can propagate all the way through. Next, all I need to do is specify that this is an event data set. I'm going to pick my user ID field. In this case, it is user ID. And my event timestamp field, you can see it's suggesting right here correctly, and hit next. Now I just need to give it a name. My sync event data set. Cool event data to show off data syncing for my description. Now, when I schedule it, I can do it on demand. So just manually refresh it. You can schedule it every hour all the way up to weekly. I'm going to just stick with manual for now and hit create. Awesome. Now you can see that my event data set is coming in and it's already started syncing automatically. Okay, here we are in a notebook. Let's start by looking at some of the data we've got here. I've got the day dimension. Let's look at the number of users that we have for each day. We'll sort it by day here. And you can see I've got starting on the 30th, going backwards in time all the way through the 16th of this month. So a couple of users each day in this, example data set. Let's also take a look at some of the page URLs that I've got here. So I'll drag those in here. You can see I've got a few different page URLs, and some of them have a problem. This one's misspelled. I've got this weird misspelling of about. And, if I drag and drop in my user ID here to look at some of those, You can see the top one here is actually a bot. So got some data quality issues going on. We need to remove this bot and we need to fix the about. In addition to that, I may have new data that's come in since, my last sync. So let's head over to BigQuery and we're going to simulate some of these new things like new data and historical data corrections and then show how it syncs all the way through. Okay, so here we are in BigQuery, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to insert some data, some new rows into our event data set so that we can simulate what it's like to have new data. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run, and this will add a few new events to my data set that we can pick up later. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that bot user so that we can simulate deleting data from the system and show that how that works. So I'm going to delete all of the rows where the user ID is I am a bot. So let's run that. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back in time and change the data in BigQuery to not delete data, but to actually alter the bad spelling that I had of about. So let me run that and we'll get that fixed too. Sweet, all my BigQuery modifications are done. Now let's head back to Trevorwithdata and let's go back to our data sets and resync them. So if I go to datasets and I see my event data set here, I can click on sync now. What that's actually going to do is it's going to go back to BigQuery, find all the rows that have changed, that were deleted, or that were added, and pull those over into Trevorwithdata. So I can actually look at the details here. I can look at the sync history, and we'll see how that works here. I should be able to see those records coming over. Cool, and you can see that that succeeded. Now I've got 6 records that were either new or modified. Awesome. Let's head back over to our report here to see if those flowed through all the way. So let's start with our day dimension and our unique users that we were looking at before. And you can see now I've got a new day. I didn't have any data for the 31st of January, but now I do. So sweet. I've got some net new data flowing in. Let's now look at that page URL dimension. And you can see the misspelling of about is now gone. So that's great. That means that that historical data correction came through. And then if we do our breakdown one more time on the home, you can see there is no more bot data in there either, showing that it was successfully deleted. So pretty cool. You can kind of keep BigQuery or whatever warehouse you're using as your source of truth. When I make changes to that data, add new data, delete data, make historical changes, it's just as simple as syncing that and having it come through. That can happen automatically or manually. So yeah, pretty cool. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Good luck out there in analytics land, and I wish you all the best. Thanks.